Hello, friends. I'm JD, the Chief Learning Architect at Axonify, and thank you for joining us for this AxoniCOM Retail session about the most important people in the frontline workplace, managers. I spent the first half of my career as an operations manager with companies like AMC and Disney, and at different points, I managed the fourth busiest movie theater on earth and the busiest roller coaster in the world. Random trivia. But that time really shaped my perspective about what it takes to enable great frontline performance. And I learned that in many cases, frontline employees don't really work for the company because they never really see the executive team or maybe never really interact with the folks from the corporate office. Instead, they work for the manager, the person that hired them and is right there with them, supporting them and holding them accountable every shift. And we ask frontline managers to wear a lot of hats in their day-to-day work. They're not just managers, right? They're operators, they're recruiters, they're ambassadors, they're trainers, they're coaches, they're counselors, and they're leaders. And their jobs are already hard, and they just get harder during challenging times when labor is tight and change is nonstop. And that leaves us with a critical question. How can we take better care of managers so they can in turn take care of our frontline teams and our businesses? Well, to help answer that question, I'm excited to be joined by a panel of retail experts who are super passionate about the people side of the business. So please join me in welcoming June Stewart, Vice President of Human Resources at Ashley Stewart.
Hello.
Matt Metzger, Senior Director of Training and Development at Dollar General.
Hello, everyone.
And Mary Beth Garcia, CEO at MOHR Retail.
Greetings. Great to be here.
Thank you all for joining us here at AxoniCOM Retail. Let's dive into our conversation about managers. My first question is a bit of a status check for everyone that's joining us today about the current state of retail managers. So if you're watching us live today, in the chat, I want you to share one word that you believe best describes how your retail managers are feeling right now. And I'll be interested to see what words you use to describe the current state of your management teams. June, I want to start off with you around the same question. How have you seen the challenges of the past few years impacting managers within your operation?
You know, there's really just a sense of being overwhelmed. And I have to say, it's not just about the business, but it's about being overwhelmed at operating in an environment, in a world that we are just overwrought with so many issues that leave people terrified on a moment by moment, day by day basis. And when you think about the work that people do in retail and having to interact with the public, so people are just, really, what I see is just more this sense of being overwhelmed and this, sort of overlap, if you will, of social, political, business, right, issues that people are having to navigate, and it's frankly overwhelming. And I hope I said personal as well, right, because there's some real personal crises that many of us have had to navigate over the last few years.
Absolutely. And it's a great point about how much bigger this conversation about taking care of people and enabling people really is beyond the nuts and bolts day to day of the job. So, Matt, I'm interested to get your thoughts at Dollar General. What kind of feedback are you getting from your management teams? How are they feeling today?
JD, people are tired. Like, this has been, I mean, if you just think about the last few years and how much has gone on, in all of the context that June was listing off, like, people are really tired, and you can't blame them. I think about this reality that a lot of our managers don't even know what normal is. Like, they don't even know what that looks like because they joined us, we've got 19,000 stores. So we have a lot of managers. And a lot of folks joined us in the midst of the pandemic, and so they don't even know what normal looks like. So it's a struggle, because their entire experience has been trying to prioritize on the fly, make decisions on the fly when we've got all of these systems and processes. Like I think from a training perspective, we've got all of these programs that are designed to work well in a stable context when there aren't supply chain disruptions, when there aren't all these different things going on. That's where they're designed to work well. And these folks, a lot of them have never even gotten to experience that. And so, yeah, tired is the word that I see more often than not.
Mary Beth, I'm interested to get your perspective, especially with what Matt just said about how we think about traditionally enabling retail managers when things are a little bit more predictable or a little bit more stable. What are you seeing in the work that you're doing with retail leaders?
Absolutely. What Matt and June said, the fatigue, being overwhelmed and out of their comfort zone. I think that leaders have to balance accountability and compassion now, and that's a hard road. The stores and the DCs have standards that have to be met. At the same time, they're understaffed. And they're trying to do so much more with less. And like you said, job changes every day. So I think that ability to be able to be compassionate and empathetic, at the same time making sure that you're driving the leaders, and the standards for the organization. And I think that's at the leaders and the multi-unit leaders, like the district managers especially. I think they're really taxed with that. They're spread thin.
Absolutely. We used a lot of words I think are circling a particular topic. So we talked about being tired, overwhelmed, spread thin. I think a lot of that leads to the word that a lot of people are talking about, not just the last couple of years, but for a while in the workplace, and that's burnout. Being long having been one of the biggest contributing factors to people leaving their jobs and turnover, now being one of the main reasons people are walking away. And what research shows is that managers are much more susceptible to the effects of burnout as compared to individual contributors on their teams. So my question is, and I'll come back to you, Mary Beth, to start, how can organizations recognize the challenge of burnout before it starts negatively impacting people and impacting the business? And what steps can managers take to overcome this kind of burnout?
Thanks. Yeah, I think you have to lean in more, and so the importance of open-ended questions and really leaning in to find out. I mean, I think fine is a four-letter word. When associates and team members say they're fine, lean in. That's a cue that things are surely not fine. And I think that particularly, we do a lot, and we use DISC and the different personality, and I think that the steadiness, the people that really are that like everything even and steady and the same, have just been up, just totally upheaval. And so you have to lean into them more because they're the ones you count on. They're your steady eddies and so forth. And now they've been holding it in. It's like holding your breath for over 2 years. And I think that it's just really important to lean in and really find and really get to your associates where they are. Everyone comes at this, and everyone has had challenge with this from a personal and a professional level. And I think that you just really need to meet them where they are and have a much more open mind, and really dig in a little bit and not take fine and I'm okay at surface value.
And one thing that clearly resonates with me is when you ask someone the question, how you doing? You need to be ready for the response to that question, right? And it's not a toss away question, especially given the challenges people are facing today. So June, I'm interested to get your thoughts, especially with what you said about the kind of bigger implications and the bigger story that's taking place around people when they are and aren't at work.
Yeah, it's funny. We were just having a conversation about this morning with my team, and the need to be willing to make recommendations that are different, that are new, that may be more aimed at the heart than at the head, and that, not to be sort of confined into a box, if you will. So I love, Mary Beth's notion around lean in, and I think in the work that we do, it is being able to be reactive, but also being able to be proactive, right? So taking the trends that we're seeing and, coming to some, conclusions a lot faster, to, create programs and take actions around. And so, the notion that we lean in and that we respond in the moment, we provide support and services to be able to hear, as we're hearing what's really going on with people, what people are needing. So whether you tap into your benefit resources, whether you tap into your network to help get people the kind of support and insight that they need in the moment is really important. And I think it is even more important for us to carry that forward to say, all right, it's not a one-time issue. It's not for one person, right? So how do we scale this across the system to address people's needs?
I was just say that's a great point, especially the fact that this is not a one and done. This is not a timely conversation, right? Burnout didn't just start to impact people in the workplace. We're just at a different level. So however organizations are thinking about this, especially with supporting their managers through burnout, this is something that has to be sustainable.
But JD, I have to say at a very practical level, it's really important that we don't get stuck on the sustainability factor, right? Because there's some things that we need to do in the moment that we just need to do. We just need to make it happen, get it done, so that the organization can move on and people can get unstuck. Because with burnout, with being overwhelmed, people just get stuck. And our goal is to help them not be stuck, help them be well, and to do a great job.
Great point. Great point. Matt, what are your thoughts?
The focus on alleviating pressure right now. Like there are some things that we for sure need to do systematically that have, a long-term strategic plan. Then there are some things that's like, great, you're watching me carry this massive boulder and you're cheering me on from the sidelines and you're telling me how I'm going to be able to do this really well but actually I just kind of need you to take the boulder off, or maybe could you take a little bit off of me right now so that I can walk. And I think sometimes we forget that both sides of that equation are so important, that when people are in the midst of it, they need encouragement, they need appreciation, they need to feel that I used to, when I was in consulting, we focused a lot of what we did around these 3 roots of engagement. This idea of that people want to be part of something bigger than themselves. They want a sense of belonging, and they want to know that their contribution makes a difference, a real difference. And so that's super important to build in and to appreciate, so that people understand and feel that the sacrifice, the things that they're going through, the difficulty, that we see it and it's valued. And they also need a little help. Over time, I feel like it's just germane to organizations to come up with a new idea and add it to the plate and add it to the plate. Oh, we need to do this, and now we need to do this, and it's never about what do we take away, what do we get rid of, what do we stop doing. We are really good at starting things. Often it's difficult as an organization to say, you know what, this really isn't as important right now. You can set this down.
I have to tell you, I am, and I'm not going to hijack the conversation, I promise. But I am, one of the things that I am liking about where we are today is that it finally feels like leaders are, Mary Beth used the word compassionate, right? So this whole notion of being compassionate, and we know, Matt, in the OD and development space, right, that piece of the emotional intelligence that we have been trying to get managers to get comfortable with, to be okay being vulnerable, that's the piece that has been missing for so long, that I am so relieved to see people trying to figure out how to show that side of themselves as a leader. And what I find is that you just can't go wrong. You absolutely can't go wrong, because our hearts tend to always be right about what people need. And if we can plug that piece into with our intellect, oh my God, what an amazing formula we end up having.
So along those lines, I'm curious then, I have 2 questions related to that idea of enabling managers to be compassionate, be empathetic, bring themselves to work so others can be themselves as well. My first question is, how do you enable that type of behavior? So how do you help people understand it's okay? Is there a skill-related element to it where it comes to helping people communicate in that way, communicate empathetically? So I'm curious, how do you enable that type of behavior within your operation? I'll start with Matt.
I think it's a good question. Whenever I think about any type of change from a behavioral perspective, we're always very quick to go to behavioral development, or different types of, okay, well, you need to learn how to do this, so we're going to teach you and then expect you to do it. And we often forget the structural side of it. Like, what are the reward systems? What are the processes, the things that are in place that are actually working for this behavior, or are an unseen barrier to this behavior? And I think that's probably the number one thing that I would say. Like, if you want to see people end up modeling, you do, we say this all the time, and when we are onboarding district managers, for instance, new district managers, we can teach you all sorts of things. We can give you an expectation of what your world is going to be like, and then when you get out there, you're going to do exactly what your director tells you to do. Like, doesn't matter what we said, should be, you're going to follow your leader, and that's what ends up happening. And so I think, probably to answer your question maybe a little more directly, to me, maybe the number one play, if you want to get managers to be in a place where they are exhibiting compassion, where they are getting to, they're leading inclusively in a way that allows people to know them and them to know the people, it has to start at the top. It has to start and be demonstrated in a meaningful way, consistently over, not a perfect way, but in an honest, transparent, consistent way over time. Because at the end of the day, if your VP, your SVP, your COO, your CEO aren't doing those things, it's like a stream at the base of a mountain starts at the top. It starts with the trickle, and if at any point in time you cut that trickle off, you don't have a river anymore.
Mary Beth, I'm interested, have you seen any this type of conversation in the work you're doing with enabling retail leaders? Are these types of conversations being prioritized? Are people looking to enable more empathetic, compassionate leadership?
I think, just to go with Matt says, though, that it's none of it's worthwhile unless it's top down. It has to be modeled what you expect. And so I think for us, and working with senior leaders, making sure that they're on board. I'm a big proponent that we don't just deliver training. We find out who is going to be reinforcing this training. Not just on the mobile app. We're talking about in real life. Who's going to give them permission to change those behaviors, change those skills, and applaud them when they, and pick them up when they, they bruise their knees a little bit and got, and fall down while they're trying something new. So you have to create that safe environment. That's a learning environment, not a proving environment.
Absolutely. And June, I'm interested to get a little bit of a different perspective on the same point, which is, we talked about enabling managers to lead people in these ways, behave in these ways. How does this relate to selection for managers? So how you identify the people within your operation who have this ability and this kind of sensibility to support people in this way, when you're looking at who are the emerging leaders, who's going to be the next person to step into a position?
Yeah, I mean, you have, you can, in its simplest format, right? It is about assessing and calling out those great behaviors when you see it. And, we all know, as a part of managers' accountability, is to, understand the talent. And when we walk through a talent planning discussion, be able to specify examples of when it's demonstrated, so that we can all be in agreement with you. We can all, meaning the management team, can be in agreement with you that this person has it, right? And so the formalized talent management pieces of it, I think, helps. And that goes back to the point that Matt was making around the infrastructure. Those are infrastructure, components around readying people and understand who has which skills, so you can leverage them in the system, particularly when you're in a system that maybe hasn't valued it as much up to this point, or not real clear about how to recognize it. So you need those role models. We need to call those people out, give them opportunities to be peer coaches, and participate in different some of the different training programs in terms of delivering it right, allowing them to have talking points, and again, because they're role models. For me, I think it's important. I love leveraging role models in the process, the people that are on the ground, my peers, colleagues at different levels, that demonstrate what we believe as an organization is important, and giving them the opportunity to help bring others along. And so when I think about it, assessing talent internally, that's how but I also think it's really important to be deliberate when you're hiring, right? So to make sure you're having the conversations around, so here's what our culture is like and where we're trying to move to. And because of that, we need people who have demonstrated, and I tell, our recruiters, I don't want to hear hypothetical. I want to know that they have practical experience. And so have them give you examples of when they've done it. Have them talk you through the outcomes. Have them talk you through what they would do differently, right? In those situations where they practice compassion, where they've been able to demonstrate some cultural intelligence so that they can connect with the people that they're going to be working with on the ground.
I think that also brings up a great question around the concept of measurement. So it's really easy to look at KPIs and business outcomes to determine if someone is a great store manager because their store is hitting goals. But as you mentioned, there's a lot more layers to what it means to being an effective, impactful leader. So I'll go to you, Matt, to start. How do you measure the types of things we're talking about when it comes to holding managers accountable to supporting their teams and taking care of their teams in this way when it's not as directly related to a traditional business KPI?
Well, and I would say measurement is probably one of the most important things to get right, or else you risk completely derailing every single effort that you've put in place. There's a Dr. John A. Battle on our team. He says what matters gets measured, what gets measured gets done. And but what I find is too often we hope we are measuring. Too often we're hoping for A, but we're actually measuring for B. And what we end up getting is A. We end up getting B, sorry, because that's what we're measuring for. We're not actually getting the behaviors that we want. To your point, JD, you can have a store manager who has, comes into this perfect situation, like just a wonderful store, like a great team, it's a great market. It would literally win regardless of who was in that seat. And then that store manager gets all the kudos for the luck of falling into this position, no matter what they did from a behavior standpoint, input standpoint. And at the same time, you can have a fantastic manager, fantastic leader who gets put into a very difficult situation, a very difficult team situation, very difficult market situation. And the output, those outcomes, when you look at them, you say, wow, this person stinks. They must not be good. But the reality is their behaviors are fantastic. They're in a very difficult spot. Too often we attribute the behaviors and we think they're directly proportional every single time to the outcomes we observe. And the problem is outcomes are really easy to measure. It's easy to measure sales. It's easy to measure, customer complaints or turnover. That's easy to measure. But those are lagging indicators that are influenced by so many other things. And so for me, from a measurement standpoint, I think the most important thing is to start with getting alignment as to what it is we're truly trying to, what needle we're truly trying to move. And then finding, okay, what are the leading and lagging indicators that would give us a sense, if this is too hard to measure directly, that could paint a picture of success.
Great point, especially around the effort required to identify what are those behaviors that make a difference when it comes to a great manager and their overall impact on the business. So we're about out of time. So I have one more question for all of you, kind of a speed round moment. In 30 seconds or so, I want to get your thoughts on, let's assume everyone out there is vigorously nodding their heads in agreement, right? They're on the same page. They want to support their management teams, enable empathetic managers to take care of their frontline workforce. How do you convince the people in your operations, so at all levels, especially the executive team, district leaders, all the different levels of the organization, how do you convince them that this is a worthwhile conversation that's worthy of investing in those managers to make sure they have the support, they have the time necessary in order to effectively lead their team? So I'll start with Mary Beth. 30 seconds. How do you convince people that this is a worthwhile investment?
Well, I think the people are the future. We've said that. And I think that there has to be an investment. The old adage of why should I invest on the front line when I have the highest percentage of turnover there is the chicken and the egg. Okay. You're going to always be fighting that. You need to step that. You need to invest in the people because they are the future and that's who does the job. And that is the one that faces your customer every day. So that is high commodity to me.
Matt, what's your pitch?
All right, straight up tactical. So often we protect executives and leaders from negative realities. My approach is often let them feel the pain. Bring them into the story in a meaningful way so that they actually viscerally feel like, wow, this is a problem and does need a solution now. Once they feel that pain truly and can't ignore it, then you've got a pathway for progress.
I think we've all had that experience where we have a store visit and the regional manager shows up and the store doesn't look anything like it does on the average day during their moments. So I think great point about bringing people into the story. June, final word to you.
There's so much data from the last couple of years around why people are leaving. Allow that information to leverage that to educate your population on what's really going on in the workforce. Your exits tell the stories these days, and don't allow anybody to leave your business without having some sort of conversations with them, so that you can use that to inform the next play. But having those executives have real conversations, I should say listening sessions, because I don't want to hear them talking. I want them to hear the staff talking about what's working, why it's working, and what could be better. How could we be better? Let the team have those conversations with your executives, so that we can move from development being an expense to an investment, because that's what it is.
Great place to wrap up. So thank you so much, June, Matt, Mary Beth, for sharing your practical insights and experiences with us today. Thanks to everyone out there for joining us and for everything that you do to empower and take care of your frontline teams. I hope you enjoy the rest of AxoniCOM Retail and have a great day, everybody. Bye now.
Doing their jobs well means your frontline employees have a lot to remember. With constantly evolving procedures, products, and promotions, it can be easy for them to forget the things that matter most, especially when you consider how their training is typically delivered. Sometimes they're forced to learn on the fly to save time, but that leads to inconsistent performance, which can put your business at risk. Other times, they'll spend hours completing training modules in front of a computer, but when they get back to the floor, they forget most of what they learned, because our brains aren't designed to remember a fire hose of information. What if there was a way to make sure the frontline training you invest in actually sticks? With Axonify Reinforce, you can continually reinforce the important things you need them to know, using focused, bite-sized bursts of daily training designed to fill their individual knowledge gaps. Let's take a look at how I would experience Axonify Reinforce as a frontline employee. The questions I receive in my training session today are personalized and intelligently generated using the Axonify Reinforce adaptive learning algorithm. It takes into account my training history, current knowledge level on key topics, and even behavior observations from my manager to make sure I receive the right content to fill my personal knowledge gaps. Now that you understand the power of reinforced learning, you're probably wondering, how will I build questions for all my existing training content for Axonify? And the answer's pretty simple, in the way that works best for you. We know your content needs are as unique as your business. That's why we've got lots of flexible ways to build and deliver content that reinforces learning in Axonify. Let's take a closer look at how you can create and leverage content in Axonify. If you want to add more to your library, you can choose from hundreds of frontline-focused topics from our content marketplace, proven to move the dial on things you care about. Our content covers a wide range of roles in different industries like retail, grocery, contact centers, finance and insurance, and it's all included on day one with Axonify. We know some things can't just be captured out of the box, like the qualities that make your products, services, and experiences unique. so you can use our built-in tools to build custom content or work with our team of learning experts to create custom content for you. Content Assistant helps to build reinforcement questions around critical topics to make sure the most important points stick. Simply upload a video script, job aid, or curated summary of information you want to create reinforcement questions for, extract the key learning points your frontline needs to know to ensure questions are based on the information that matters most, and lean on Content Assistant to generate questions and answers for you in minutes. To get your frontline learning the unique things they need to know to perform on the job fast. At the end of the day, the learning platform you invest in will only be as good as the content you put in it. We'll work with you to make sure it actually works. Talk to us today to learn more.